So, hey guys, it's week 4. Can barely believe it. It literally still feels like week 1. Got this new tapestry, went ham on the shopping on Amazon. Love it. Also, does everyone else know that if you go to Whole Foods and have a Prime account, you get a discount? I'll be shopping there more often now. And if I look down periodically, it's because I have my notes. But the very first question, let's just jump right into it. A very important concept that I learned this week was emergency preparedness, and I would describe this as a bunch of things an emergency management agency can do beforehand to really instill or establish a state of readiness for a community before a disaster hits. And I think this was really interesting for me because, as someone that comes from an area that's really prone to hurricanes or blizzards, and we've had 2 earthquakes, so I don't really count that. But it's really stressful, really scary, and I never really thought of everything that goes on behind the scenes. So it's really interesting to see, this is what they do and everything. And also a little scary because it kind of shows that these people kind of, a majority of people kind of want to act reactively instead of planning beforehand. So really interesting. Also, I learned about the functional capability analysis, which was something that actually I found really muddy before. So it was really interesting and actually one of the most interesting things that I learned about this week. And in this, first, the functional capability analysis is kind of how people in a specific region can kind of and analyze data and see how they can be the best best that year to really be the most to be the most capable at being prepared for a disaster. So in this analysis, there's actually 4 components. Emergency assessment, which is when they look at present and past conditions in the area to see how they are doing, if they should use more resources or something like that. Hazard operations, which is more about how if, let's say, there's a wildfire, okay, maybe we need more firefighters, or if there's a chemical plant explosion, maybe a chemical plant explosion, sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, then maybe we should invest in cleanup crews for that. Then there's population protection, and this is mostly about kind of evacuations, making sure there's shelters, making sure people are really protected. And then incident management, and this was kind of muddy for me, but it's about how, at least what I got from it was how people communicate and how the overall disaster is really contained and managed, if that makes sense. And another thing I found really interesting was a quote, and it said, "We can improvise during an emergency rather than plan beforehand." And I found this really interesting that someone said this because I think it's obvious that you should plan beforehand because then you can just follow the sequence. But if you improvise, then there's room for error, just like the firefighters who were taking people into their firehouse to give them shelter and food when there was literally a center right down the road or something where they could have just dropped them off and could have had clean hands. So the most muddy part of this week, other than the incident management, was the formalization of emergency planning process. I thought this was really muddy for me because I really didn't understand why people thought, I did get why people thought if disasters are more frequent in one area, then their formalization of emergency planning process would be more advanced. But I also thought, well, if this area is more advanced, then why don't people just follow this area's protocol? Like, I just thought, like, if they're doing a good job, then why don't other areas that are experiencing the same disasters follow the same plan? It just doesn't make, because I feel like if one doctor, like, let's do an analogy, if one doctor does a surgery that goes really well, then it's probably going to be published, and then that treatment or surgery, whatever, is going to fly off and be like the new surgery. Like, not like it's not just going to happen at one hospital. You know what I mean? Like people are going to take it and use it because it's helpful. So I really didn't understand that. And I also didn't understand why people don't like to plan beforehand. That was kind of muddy for me too, because I think it's just easier. Just like if you're going into an exam, you're going to plan and study beforehand. You're not just going to improvise during the exam. You know what I mean? It's just better results. And for an in-class discussion, I think I would really like to talk about the pros and cons um, of the current emergency preparedness that we have, especially after reading this whole like document. I think it was really interesting to hear about everything that we do and everything that we can kind of build upon. And I think also maybe taking from that discussion question, what do you think? What else we could do that could really help us and really kind of strengthen our emergency preparedness? Well, other than that, have a great week, guys, and see you next week. Bye.